All three levels of government have to put in money to make sure that there are enough units, large units for these families, for the families that need it.
The number of people that identify as Indigenous in Canada now sits at 1.8 million, growing twice as fast as the non-Indigenous population, according to the latest Canadian census. Between 2016 and 2021, the Indigenous population grew 9.4%, now making up 5% of Canada's total population. But at the same time, numbers around poor housing conditions within the Indigenous population is rising and contributing to higher poverty rates.
It's not surprising at all that people, especially Indigenous people, are living in substandard housing. It's been like that for years.
The number of Indigenous people living in housing in need of major repairs was almost 3 times higher than non-Indigenous Canadians. Mary Burton from Fearless R2W says Winnipeg's North End is the perfect example of inadequate housing.
I have 4 kids, and myself and my husband. We need at least a 4 or 5 bedroom house, and we can't afford to pay the rents that are wanted. We can't pay $2,200 a month for a 5 bedroom house. I don't know who can.
Over 1 in 6 Indigenous people lived in crowded housing, dwellings that are considered not suitable for the number of occupants. The numbers are even higher for First Nations people living on reserves, as over 1 in 5 people lived in crowded housing in 2021. Low-income housing among Indigenous people was also still a major issue, as over 24% of Indigenous children 14 years and younger lived in a low-income home.
We have a system that's kind of set us up to fail, the Indigenous population, and part of that is that it's a system that's designed by people that don't recognize all of the historical trauma that comes with simply being born as an Indigenous person.
Indigenous children accounted for more than half of all the children in foster care in Canada at 53.8%. Jennifer Mason with Inner City Youth Alive says nothing will change if no real action is taken.
We should be looking at prevention services and, okay, here's a kid who's underage, who's going to have a baby, and whose only crime at this point is being underage. So how do we set them on the right path? How do we work with them so that they can have the hope of being a family, not have their baby ripped away from them?
Burton believes the time to act is now.
The issue is going to get worse before it gets better.
In Winnipeg, Alex Karpa, City News.